Okay, so what the heck is einkorn flour, and why do we want to use it? Okay, so 20,000 years ago or whatever, when wheat began to be cultivated in the Fertile Crescent, there weren't a gajillion different kinds of wheat. There was one wheat. And that wheat was very similar to einkorn. Einkorn means one grain, more or less, in German. And why do they call it one grain? Well, because when you imagine a field of wheat and all of those little threads that come out of the top of the wheat plant, einkorn is a kind of wheat that has only one seed per thread. And over time, as we hybridized wheats, and by the way, hybridization is not bad. It's what we've always done in agriculture, and it's how we adapt species over time. We created wheats that had multiple seeds on one grain and also kind of changed the nature of the grain itself. Einkorn here you can see is just one, it's like one grain, okay? But here's another kind of farro. And in Italian there are three kinds of farro, and einkorn in Italian is called piccolo farro. If you look here at this grain, you see there's a little line in between the sides of this grain. That is different, right? That is the different type of morphology of this wheat seed. And it turns out that that morphology is extremely important for how gluten proteins form and behave in your guts, okay? So it turns out that non-hybridized wheat, one seed per thread wheat, has a very different type of protein structure. The proteins in wheat are called gliadins, and gliadins link together in the process of making a dough and baking, rising and baking. And the way the gliadins link together and the way those resulting gluten threads are developed turns out has a big effect on the lining of your gut. As I mentioned when we were mixing the dough, that there are some really interesting in vitro studies done in Italy that show that the proteins, the gluten threads, the gliadins in piccolo farro or einkorn are much less inflammatory to your enterocytes. Those are the cells that line your intestinal tract. You can see how the behavior of the gluten thread in einkorn is very different, because in einkorn breads, you don't get these big open crumbs. You know, when you see those like country loaves that have huge holes in them, or commercial breads that rise a lot, that's because of the very elastic, stretchy gluten threads. But it turns out that maybe those very elastic, stretchy gluten threads are a little bit more inflammatory to our guts. So einkorn bread is never going to be full of holes or look like those artisanal boules that you can get at the bakery, but that's okay because it might be better for us and it might be more digestible.